So one of the things I wanted to do today is I wanted to talk a little bit about just a rant on rants. And today's rant is really going to be one of those things where it's not a bad rant. To be honest, it's a rant of which I am trying my best to be the moderator here. And today's topic is going to be on infotainment system and why the infotainment system when it comes to cars are not as bad as you're thinking they are, especially as we move forward into the future. And what do I mean by that? So I typically mean in this scenario, I'm looking at it from a point of view of saying that not every single car manufacturer has bad intentions. They're trying to progress themselves as if this was 2005. And what do I mean by that? So in 2005, we had a huge cell phone explosion when it went to the smartphones. Smartphones started to grow really quickly, and the one thing that stood out for everybody was most smartphones had a QWERTY keyboard, and it was a fixed button keyboard. Well, over that course of 2005 to 2006, those QWERTY keyboards slowly started integrating into on-screen keyboards with very flimsy, cheap feeling, digital touchscreens that did not do really well. So the consensus was for you to have a really good phone, you had to have a QWERTY keyboard, physical buttons for you to actually type and be proficient with and be accurate. Well, over time, it turned out that one company decided that that wasn't the way and the only way that you could do it, and that was Apple. And we all know the history from the iPhone when it first was announced when Steve Jobs walked across the stage and said, you don't need a stylus anymore to touch the screen. Your finger is the stylus. Well, fast forward to now, and we now have manufacturers kind of doing the same thing where they're going to start using a integrated touchscreen, and the infotainment system is all built around that touchscreen. And so many manufacturers are trying to become that first company like Apple to bring out the best overall experience when it comes to having an integrated touchscreen with quick response, very accurate response, and at the same time be very easy for you to kind of manage and not have to worry about the what if scenario. Shoot fly. So I look at some of the companies out right now, companies like Volkswagen, who has basically shifted their whole philosophy when it comes to their new infotainment system. It basically was started and debuted on the ID4, then it went to the GTI and the Golf R. Now it's gone over to the new Atlas. So we can only assume that this new system is going to be on the new Tiguan in 2025. The new ID Buzz, we know it's going to be on that. We've already seen that. The ID3 over in Europe, we know it's on that already. So as a whole, that company is changing their philosophy to that same direction. But we don't talk about one other company who's already kind of done something similar, and that's Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz started doing it. Now, they had physical buttons in certain areas that were very necessary on a lot of their systems, but they've moved to this 2.0 and 3.0 versions in like the S-Class and the EQS and the EQB. I'm sorry, the EQE, not EQB. And those systems are way more advanced, and they're fully touchscreen too. A few buttons here and there, some knobs, but we have to think about what they're trying to do. They're trying to move us into a new age, new direction. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I can tell you that right now, Volkswagen's had their issues. My biggest thing with Volkswagen throughout all of their systems was the first generation that they put on the ID4 and the ID3 was the fact that that touch panel, that touch bar at the bottom was not illuminated. That was my biggest gripe. Other than that, yeah, it had some growing pains with some software glitches at the very beginning for the 2021 model and 2020 models of the ID4 and ID3. But as we've seen over time, they've enhanced that. We hear less and less people complaining about glitches. Now, it still happens, but it's definitely better than it was in 2021 and 2022. Moving forward, I see that their new system that they've shown off in the ID7 and in the ID Buzz look 10 times better. And from what early reviewers have shown, it seems to perform 10 times better. So that's a good sign. Same thing with Mercedes. If you go back to when they first started doing their infotainment system and they started integrating it, it was a little laggy here and there. It wasn't perfect, but it was a little bit more polished than Volkswagen's. Moving forward to other brands, Honda had a lot of backlash when they did it on the Civic and the CRV, where you didn't have a volume knob or tuning knob. Well, their issue was the fact that the way they did their volume was a scroll up thing, and it didn't really work out well, especially when you're driving down the road. It was very laggy. That screen was just not that great. Then they came back and redid it and introduced a newer system. I think it was around 2018, 2019, when they introduced the new Civic this past year. They had already started to integrate a new system in there. And it does much better than it used to. But they added the volume button back, and they added the tuning knob back, depending on which model that you're looking at. So as we keep talking about the overall what's better, what's not, we need to be a little bit more open-minded. Granted, it is going to be about what you like and what you trust. So don't take my word for it. Please never, ever do that. Go out and try it for yourself, because what I think I like is something that you may not like at all. And better yet, once you start thinking about what the actual procedures and the way that people are implementing these systems in their cars, that's where it's going to differentiate everything. Now, one of the future things that are coming up is going to be the integration of Android Automotive. Not Android Auto, but Android Automotive. And that seems to be the happy medium for a lot of manufacturers. We know that GM has already pretty much said that they're going to go that direction. We know that several other companies are starting to look at Android Automotive. Volvo's already doing it with the Polestar brand, and then Volvo's themselves. And there's a couple other brands out there I can't remember off the top of my head, but they already are integrating Android Automotive in their system, and it does a really good job. I really must say that. But it's not Android Auto, so it doesn't have to work off the phone. It's actually an integrated system that they're using instead of using things like their own developers to develop some random stuff. And when I say random stuff, I mean random stuff. Some of those things are just ridiculous. I've been in cars before, and I get in them, I'm touching around, and not only is it laggy, but it just seems to be not a great proficient software. And that includes some of the Volkswagen products, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm a Volkswagen fan, but I'm not a fanboy. I'm not going to sit there and say they can't do any wrong. I know that's not true. But I will say I give automotive companies a chance, sometimes many chances. And, as a Volkswagen owner 3 times, I can tell you I have always enjoyed my driving experience. I've always enjoyed the performance that I got for what I purchased. But I've never felt like I was in a car that was bad. The only reason why I would trade out of them was because I saw a new shiny object down the road. And if you know me, you know I got gas. Not unleaded, but gear acquisition syndrome. And unfortunately, that's actually now turning into cars. And that's a very expensive hobby. So I'm not trying to continue to do this consistently. My goal is to go with an EV on my next round. But to be honest, if someone like Volkswagen or some other version like an Audi that stands out, that looks really appealing to me, and I can get a really good deal on it, I might go that route and just extend my wait until I'm ready EV time. And I don't know when that's going to be. I'm assuming 2025, maybe late 2024, I may look at trying to go with an EV. But it all depends on what's on the market, what features are there, and where the performance is going. The one last thing I did want to mention to you guys is that you never ever want to just jump into a car without actually doing some research. So use me, use many of the other, reviewers out there, the automotive journalists. I'm not a journalist by no means. Please don't ever look at me as being a journalist. I'm just doing this as a hobby and it's for fun, because I like to share my overall opinions of automotive groups. And overall, I have been a huge fan of, Car and Driver, Motor Trend, the fast lane car, of course, out of spec motors. These guys all do a phenomenal job by digging deep into what the car has, what the vehicle has, the inside, outside, performance levels, fuel economy. Consumer Reports is another one that I use, but I don't rely on them as much because sometimes their views are coming from a massive view. And you have to think one-sided when you start looking at that. And that is every manufacturer that brings out a car, they bring it out to appeal to a few people. And it's a small demographic, to be honest. Truck owners are a small demographic. Not everybody buys a truck. They sell a lot of them, but not everybody wants one or buys one. EVs, a small percentage of people are going to buy an EV right now. 20 years from now, that small percentage is going to be the majority because that's what you're going to have mostly on the market. Now, as we start moving forward into this EV world and this growing nation of changes, I can tell you that I see bright futures as long as we, as a country, stay focused. But I see that we're going to have a bright future when it comes to the overall electric market. When you have an even out playing field, where EVs right now are about 5 to 10% of the market share, depending on what city and area that you're in. It's 10% in some areas, some places it's like 2%. But then when we start looking at the overall market, I see that shift within 10 years. We'll see 30% of the market will be EVs. I want you to just go back and when you're going through and you're looking at reviews, don't just judge a car by its infotainment system. Don't just judge a car by the looks, but take some time to get to know the vehicle and make sure that it's what you want to drive, what you like to drive, and what you need at this point in time. Because not everybody needs to go out here and buy a brand new car. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, right now, the finances are just, not in your favor. So that's my rant for today. Please like, subscribe, or I should say like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.